12 and a half years. We have waited 12 and a half years for this moment, and I know I'm not the only one when I say that it sure as hell was worth the wait. 465 days after it was initially teased online, Samurai Jack Season 5 has finally begun to air on Adult Swim, and boy does it deliver. Take note, Cartoon Network, this is how you bring a show back. Not by removing all the action and charm that made the original series so enjoyable, not by stooping to the lowest common denominator of entertainment and insulting your viewers, I haven't actually watched much of this one. That fucking face though. Now, I've been a fan of Samurai Jack for a long time. Heck, pretty much ever since it first started airing on television back in the summer of 2001. It was a show that was new and innovative at the time, and it continues to remain one of the most incredibly well-crafted hand-drawn cartoons ever created, even by today's standards. It took risks that no other animated television series had ever done before. It had methods of storytelling and artistic cinematography that have been largely unmatched in the realms of 2D animation. Just look at the battle with the Shinobi Shadow Warrior, for instance. Its brilliant contrast between light and darkness creates one of the most heart-pumpingly expressive sword fights I've ever seen, animated or otherwise. And man, I could gush all day about the battle between Jack and the Ultra Robots. In case you weren't already aware, I actually made a review of the original series back in September of 2016, and while I admit I could have done a better job looking back on it now, I still think it encapsulates just how much affection I have for this show. Samurai Jack is a series that has had such a positive impact on my life. So when I heard that Genndy Tartakovsky, the creator of the series, was bringing it back to deliver us the epic conclusion that literally everyone and their grandmother's been begging for, you'd better believe I squealed like a little fangirl. But now that it's out, does Season 5 manage to match the same quality that the first 4 seasons are known for? Well, judging by everything I've said so far, I think you can already tell what my answer is.
Yes! 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 Yes!
It's no contest. Season 5 is going to be one hell of a ride, and the first episode couldn't have done a better job at setting up just what's in store for our beloved Samurai Warrior. Now, I think the best place to start when evaluating my thoughts on a series like this is with the overall appearance of the show, and damn does it look good. The animation is nearly identical to the original series, just with the updated 1080p quality and the standard widescreen aspect ratio that's become the norm in recent years. The series is animated digitally now instead of being hand-painted, but I honestly think it looks just as good, if not better, in certain circumstances.
The biggest thing we're trying to do is not to make it feel digital.
However, the most pronounced improvement that I noticed when watching the series premiere is the color. Oh, the color. I don't know whose decision it was to make these colors so prominent, but give that person an award, because these scenes contain some of the most beautiful imagery that I have ever laid my eyes upon. I knew previous episodes were strong in their coloring choices, but oh my god, this is on a whole nother level. I could marvel at some of these frames all day long and never get tired of them. They're that gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
It should come as a surprise to no one that the choreography is just as phenomenal as it's always been. But frankly, I don't think my words can do it justice. It's just jam-packed with incredible fight scenes and glorious violence that gets my adrenaline rushing. My biggest hope for the series was that the action was still top-notch, and I can say with extreme gratification that that's certainly the case. I also greatly appreciate the fact that the crew decided to utilize a lot of the old sound effects that were used in the original run. It gives me a sort of nostalgic feeling that I'm sure others familiar with shows like Dexter's Lab and the Powerpuff Girls can relate to. I've called the classic a masterpiece many times before, and I'm glad to know I can say the same for the design of this new season as well. Dare I say, this could very well be the pinnacle of Western animation. No, animation in general. Genndy and his team are some of the best in the business, there is no doubt about it. And speaking of the best in the business, the voice cast is just as memorable as ever. Phil Lamar returns to voice Jack once again, perfectly I might add, and many other big names like Tom Kenny, Gray DeLisle Griffin, Tara Strong, John DiMaggio, and many more are all slated to appear. Now, I don't want to give too much away in terms of the plot of the first episode, since the last thing I want to do is ruin the experience for someone, so if you want to avoid some minor spoilers, I recommend you skip to the time I've currently displayed on screen so that you can see the show for yourself. I'll give you 3 seconds. Still here? Okay, good. Jack's completely lost his way, and it is readily apparent through his stress and the traumatic hallucinations that remind him of his duty, of which he is still not fulfilled. This seems to be the major theme of the season that's going to be teaching us about Jack's descent and possible ascension back to his former glory, and I'm totally down with seeing something like this. It's incredible just how much Jack is suffering through. He is experiencing some form of post-traumatic stress disorder, and by the looks of things, it's beginning to overtake his life to the point where it even interrupts his focus mid-combat. It seems like his state of mind has become isolated from everything else in the world because he's been tracking down Aku for over 50 years now. I admire this idea because it reflects how a lot of the longtime viewers, such as myself, must feel while watching this revival. It's invigorating to see how much has changed in Jack's life because it's been over a decade since we've last seen the guy. A lot of time has passed in both the show and in the real world, and I not only think this makes the new season seem fresh, but also temporally coherent. Many events have passed between seasons 4 and 5, such as Jack losing his family's magic sword. That's a big deal considering it is the only known weapon in existence with the capability of defeating Aku. So the fact that Jack no longer has it in his possession is a huge detriment for sure. I have no idea whether or not he's actually going to get it back, but if I had to make a prediction, I'd be willing to bet that he does come across it again in one of the later episodes. It's interesting to me that because Jack no longer has his sword, he has to rely on other weapons for combat. I mean, Jack was never the kind of warrior to rely on firearms as weapons, nor was he the man to wear armor and ride a motorcycle. So this type of symbolism goes back to the idea about how Jack has lost his way. I am also fascinated by the daughters of Aku. They are the 7 female warriors that are shown being born towards the beginning of the first episode, something that undoubtedly would not have made it into the original series, might I add, especially considering the fact that they placed the infants up to an idol of Aku as some part of cultish ritual. It's pretty questionable whether or not this would fly in seasons 1 through 4. I mean, these kids are literally beaten senselessly by this brute in order to toughen them up. These girls literally have their lives stripped away from them as they become brainwashed into serving Aku because everyone believes his evil to be law. That's some dark stuff right there. Scenes centering around these daughters are interspliced between the segments that focus around Jack, thus allowing for the parallel editing style to take its full effect. As the episode goes on, the daughters are seen growing in both skill and age as they get closer and closer to becoming the ultimate warriors meant to serve Aku. They exist for the sole purpose of defeating Jack, and something tells me their encounter with him is going to be one of the greatest moments in this series yet. It seems that these daughters are going to be taking the forefront as the antagonist role, at least for the beginning of the season, because Aku is never actually seen once in the premiere. Other than being mentioned by name, he is only heard from over a communicator for about 15 seconds or so before being cut off, and something tells me he's being kept in the background in order to build more suspense. Gendy's definitely got something big planned. I can sense it. I have no difficulty calling this revival part of the definitive Samurai Jack experience. It's taken what made the older seasons so good and enhanced them to their maximum potential. And speaking of older seasons, one nice touch that I really appreciated was the fact that this episode ended with the same old still frame and theme just like the original. It was charming to see that despite having a new intro, which I love too by the way, the 5th season's episodes conclude in a similar manner. One thing I noticed that many people were concerned about was that the show might go a little overboard with the violence now that the series is being produced for Adult Swim instead of Cartoon Network. However, I find this mature tone to be more suited for fans of the series because the majority of people who are likely to watch this show are those who've either stuck around since the show's beginning or other young adults curious enough to give the show a shot after hearing about it. Plus, from what's been shown so far, there isn't anything too ridiculous or unbelievable. There's only a little blood here and there and slightly more destruction, but it's not overly exaggerated to the point where it detracts from the episode. I mean, yeah, taking arrows to the face isn't something that would be seen in the more kid-friendly seasons of the show, but it's not like it's a huge gory mess or anything. The other fear I've noticed people have over the past several months is that a lot seem to be skeptical that this revival wouldn't hold up. Understandably so, especially considering the fact that reboots in general tend to have such a negative stigma in this current day and age. But what gets me is that this is Gendy we're talking about here. This is the guy behind Dexter's Lab, Symbionic Titan, the first Clone Wars series, Hotel Transylvania, and of course, Samurai Jack. Not once have I ever doubted this man, because he knows exactly what he's doing. Like I said earlier, I consider him to be one of the best, if not the best, in the entire industry. Now obviously a lot of the praise that I'm giving this season premiere is being fueled by a lot of hype and excitement, which should not be a surprise given the fact that I've wanted to see this become a reality for years now. It's entirely possible that I might end up finding some flaws as the series goes on. But at this point in time, I've seen almost nothing but positive things, and that's a very solid step in the right direction for the rest of the season. The series will continue to air on Adult Swim every Saturday night for the next several weeks until it reaches its final episode, and I highly recommend that all of you tune in to watch the show. I personally cannot wait to see what's in store for Jack as the season progresses, especially that epic conclusion that everyone, myself included, has been begging for. Now if only Powerpuff Girls could have been this way.